You get called into a meeting. The invitation says, quick check-in, which is workplace language for either absolutely nothing or the next 6 months of your life changing before lunch. Your manager thanks you for everything you have contributed. Then someone from Human Resources explains that the company is restructuring around artificial intelligence. Your role is being eliminated. The robot doesn't need health insurance. It doesn't take vacation. It does not ask why the department has had 4 reorganizations since February. For a while, the company calls this progress. Then customers start asking questions the bot can't answer. Work moves faster, but some of it moves in the wrong direction. The people left behind spend their days checking, correcting, apologizing, and figuring out where the missing context went. Then the company starts hiring people again. Maybe it doesn't call you. Maybe it hires someone else, renames the role, or brings the work back through a contractor. But somebody still has to handle the judgment calls, unusual cases, and frustrated customers the AI can't. The company brings that work back in a different form, often without bringing back the same worker, pay, or job security. AI can do useful work. Of course it can. But companies made a huge leap from "this can help someone do the job" to "this can replace the person doing it." But some companies made that leap before they understood the job they were replacing. And when the shortcut failed, the company could change course. You couldn't undo the layoff. That is the risk transfer. If the experiment works, the company keeps the savings. If it fails, you still carry the layoff. Which explains why the rush to replace workers could move much faster than the evidence that replacing them would actually improve the business. The World Economic Forum surveyed more than 1,000 global employers for its 2025 Future of Jobs report. 41% expected to reduce staff as AI became capable of automating more tasks. But 77% also planned to train workers to use AI, and nearly half expected to move people from disrupted roles into other parts of the company. Those plans point in 2 directions. Use the technology with workers, or use it instead of workers. The second option looks cleaner on a spreadsheet. A salary disappears immediately. The software bill arrives under another department. The difficult costs show up later, usually in places with less impressive charts. This was never simply a technology decision. It was a labor decision wrapped in a technology story. In IBM's 2025 survey of 2,000 chief executives, only 1/4 said their AI initiatives had delivered the expected return. Just 16% said those initiatives had scaled across the company. Yet 64% admitted that fear of falling behind pushed them to invest in some technologies before they clearly understood the value. For a lot of executives, moving fast had become a way to prove they weren't falling behind, even when they still weren't sure what the technology would deliver. That is a remarkable way to gamble with someone else's paycheck. The company does not have to know that AI can replace your job. It only has to worry that a competitor might try first. So the layoff becomes evidence that leadership is being decisive. The press release says the company is becoming leaner. Investors hear efficiency. You hear that your paycheck is gone and the bills are not. And the whole decision rests on one very convenient assumption: that leadership understood what your job actually involved. Most jobs look much simpler from a budget meeting than they do from the desk where they are performed. Your job was never one task. The official description might say that you answer customer questions, review documents, write reports, process claims, schedule appointments, or maintain code. That's the visible work. The actual job includes knowing when the normal process should not be followed. You remember which client needs a phone call instead of an email. You know which number looks technically valid but is almost certainly wrong. You recognize the request that sounds ordinary until you notice one sentence that changes everything. You know who can fix a problem, who will only schedule a meeting about it, and who should never be copied until the situation is already under control. None of this looks dramatic while you're doing it. It looks like judgment. And judgment can look inefficient because it often appears as a person pausing before they act. AI is very good at a lot of defined tasks. It can summarize, classify, draft, search, translate, and respond at a speed that would take a very large human team to match. But completing a task is not the same as owning the outcome. A tool can generate the answer, but a person still has to notice when the answer shouldn't be sent. Sometimes that difference doesn't become obvious until the person is gone. Klarna became one of the clearest examples. In 2024, the company said its AI assistant was handling 2/3 of customer service chats and doing work equivalent to about 700 full-time agents. Klarna also said the tool cut average resolution time from 11 minutes to 2. Its workforce fell from roughly 5,000 to 3,800 over about a year, mostly through attrition rather than 700 direct layoffs. At first, the numbers looked great. More chats handled, faster resolution, fewer employees on payroll. But cost and speed weren't the only things Klarna had to worry about. Klarna's chief executive later acknowledged that cost had become too dominant in how customer service was organized, and that the result was lower quality. The company began recruiting human support again and shifted its AI message away from cost-cutting and toward better service and growth. Klarna didn't abandon the assistant. It kept using AI for most customer service chats. What changed was the belief that lower costs were enough. The AI didn't suddenly become useless. The company discovered that the metric it optimized was not the whole job. Speed was real, savings were real, but so was the need to keep a person available when the routine answer didn't solve the actual problem. That is why AI failed is too simple. In many cases, the failure is managerial. Leadership chooses a task that technology can perform, draws a circle around it, and calls the circle a job. Everything outside the circle becomes somebody else's problem, usually the workers who remain. Now, you're told that AI makes you more productive. What this means in practice is that the software handles the easy volume while you inherit the difficult leftovers. Every case is unusual. By the time a customer reaches you, they may already be frustrated from arguing with the chatbot. Deadlines start getting set around the speed of automation, even though your part begins when automation gets stuck. You are no longer doing the old job. You are supervising a machine, repairing its mistakes, managing frustrated people, and carrying responsibility for decisions the machine helped produce. Congratulations! You have become the quality control department for a strategy you were never asked to approve. This is where replacing workers can backfire without producing a dramatic scene where every executive apologizes and invites everyone back. The company may restore human review. It may hire specialists to manage the AI. It may reopen roles under names like escalation expert, automation analyst, AI trainer, customer experience associate, or human-in-the-loop operator. The company may bring back the human part of the job without bringing back the person who used to do it. And notice what "need you back" often means. It doesn't always mean restoring the old team, the old pay, or the old security. The company may hire fewer people, give them broader responsibilities, and use them only for the difficult cases the software can't handle. So the work returns in pieces, but the stable job does not always return with it. So the same company can say automation succeeded because headcount stayed lower, even while human labor is being purchased again through a different door. The spreadsheet still looks efficient, and the worker now supplies the flexibility. Gartner reported in 2026 that just 20% of surveyed customer service leaders had actually reduced agent staffing because of AI. It also predicted that by 2027, half of companies that attributed headcount cuts to AI would rehire people to perform similar functions, often under different titles. That's a forecast, not a completed result, but it points to something we're already starting to see. In a 2026 Orgvue survey of 300 U.S. HR managers, 32% of organizations that had cut staff expecting AI savings said they later rehired people because those savings didn't materialize. The same survey found that 23% of companies that made layoffs had relied on broad assumptions about what AI could do instead of closely examining the jobs they were cutting. That doesn't mean a third of all companies are reversing AI layoffs. It was a self-reported survey of 300 HR managers, but it does show that this fire and rehire cycle is already happening, not just being predicted. The fantasy was a workforce that disappeared. The emerging reality is a workforce that gets rearranged around the machine, often after people have already paid the price of the experiment. But that mistake lands very differently depending on which side of the decision you're on. For leadership, it becomes a lesson. For you, it can mean losing insurance, spending your savings between jobs, missing retirement contributions, and explaining the gap to the next employer. The company gets to fail forward. You get laid off. While you are trying to find another job, the fallout gets handed to whoever is still there. Executives see faster response times and lower payroll. The people still at the desks see the cases the system cannot handle. They spend 3 hours fixing a problem that the dashboard already marked resolved. The savings are counted the day you leave. The damage shows up one exception at a time. By then, the layoff announcement is old news. The correction is spread across overtime, consultants, delayed projects, and new roles with unfamiliar names. There is no single line labeled, "We removed too much human judgment." There should be, because that's the deeper backfire. It's not only that businesses sometimes need human workers again, it's that companies can run a live experiment on the workforce without absorbing the full cost when the theory breaks. The worker carries the instability. Unemployment systems take on more claims, while governments collect less tax revenue. Customers carry the degraded service. The remaining staff carry the cleanup. Then the company announces a new phase of responsible AI adoption. By then, the people who paid for the original decision may be long gone. So your skepticism isn't proof that you fear technology. You may use AI every day. You may understand exactly where it saves time. You may even use it to research, draft, create, or solve problems faster. That is the difference between assistance and replacement. A tool helping with part of the work is not the same as the tool owning the outcome, checking the facts, understanding the people affected, or carrying the consequences when something goes wrong. The problem was never using AI to help people make things. It was assuming that because a tool could help with the work, the person behind the work had become unnecessary. You also understand that a tool which helps one person do more can be used in two very different ways. It can remove repetitive work and give the person more room for judgment, or it can remove coworkers and give the remaining person more responsibility. Both versions appear on a slide as productivity. Only one feels like progress from your side of the desk. The most useful question is not, "Can AI do this task?" It's, "What happens to the whole job after this task is automated? Who checks the edge cases? Who trains the system? Who speaks to the customer when confidence is gone? Who is legally responsible? Who notices that the output is polished, plausible, and wrong? Who develops into the experienced worker the company will need 5 years from now if the entry-level work is removed today?" Those costs do not disappear. They move. And once enough of them move onto customers, contractors, smaller teams, and former workers, the savings start to look less impressive. So when the company needs people again, it may not need the exact version of you it discarded. It wants your judgment without restoring your security, your experience without admitting that experience was the asset, your availability without the promise that you will still be there after the next experiment. That is why coming back is not a clean victory. The layoff already taught you something about the relationship. The company considered your job replaceable before it understood your job. Now it understands more, but you understand more too. Look, they didn't discover that humans are better than AI at everything. They discovered that your work was larger than the task they automated. And by the time they figured that out, you had already carried the cost of teaching them. Has your workplace used AI to remove work, remove workers, or simply pile more responsibility onto whoever stayed? Tell me what happened in the comments. And if your job never replaced you, but it did slowly teach you to care less, watch the video on screen next. That one looks at what happens when extra effort becomes the expectation and the reward never catches up.